strategist, Mr. Steve Bannon.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
You know, Steve, I feel like 2 years ago, if somebody had asked me when I was like hostessing at a restaurant in Soho, or had told me that I was going to be talking to the former chief strategist of the president of the United States of America, I would have been like, is he taking a reservation? Or no, it's this is kind of crazy.
This is what we call a fourth turning.
Yeah. Well, we're going to ask you about that one.
Yeah.
You might have to mansplain that to us because I'm not so sure what that means. I think we have an idea.
I'm not actually so sure either, but
okay.
Yeah, you are.
You know.
You know. Do you think that Corona is the potential igniter of the fourth turning?
I don't think it's the igniter. I think it's because I don't think this is a black swan. I think this is a white swan. This is the great tragedy of this is that this was so predictable and so we had all the tools. It should have had all the systems and tools and all of that in place. I think it reinforces this concept of the managed decline of America and really the West by the elites. And to me, it's very obvious what happened here, and this is the great tragedy. And unfortunately, your generation and the youngest generation is going to pay for this for many, 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 many decades. And that's the big tragedy about it. No, I don't think this is the igniter. I think probably the financial crisis of 2008 lit the match. And this is just another explosion in that process. But we're definitely in a fourth turning. You can tell. That's why it feels so unsettling and so uncertain. But no, I think it was ignited at least a decade ago.
Could you provide sort of a working definition of a fourth turning for our listeners? Yeah,
you have these. Basically, it's based around how a work by Neil Howe and Strauss. Strauss passed away. Neil Howe's still around. It's about generational. The generational theory of history, and it's how every generation is raised differently and has a different set of values and a different kind of set of ways that they look at the world. And so that every 80 to 100 years, you kind of go through these cycles. It's a cyclical interpretation of history. So you've had like the Revolution, the Civil War, the Great Depression, World War II, and now the financial crisis, or whatever we want to call from the 9/11, basically the 21st century. And you have these mounting kind of climaxes because the old systems don't work, the old institutions don't quite work, and people in younger generations or in different generations think of the world differently. And so, and we're definitely in a fourth turning now. I mean, this is the great. We've had the Revolution, the Civil War, the Great Depression, World War II, and now we've got this. What do you call it? The financial crisis, or the I guess it's this part of it's the pandemic, but it's been going on for quite a while, and we don't know. The thing is, you never know what's going to be on the other side, right? In the Revolutionary generation, we didn't know whether we break off from the British Empire. In the Civil War, we didn't know leading up to it. Whether we're going to have a plantation aristocracy that had independent South, or whether we still be a nation at the Great Depression and World War II, between the time of the crash in '29 in Pearl Harbor, and then afterwards we didn't know, would the fascists control the world? Would we be basically a socialist state? You don't know. Like right now, we're totally uncertain. I think I have a pretty good handle.
Do you have any predictions?
Well, here's what I think is that it's going to be very different on the other side. I actually think we're going to reformulate politics around like we did in 32, and it's going to be much more worker-based, much more populist, much more nationalistic. And nationalist, I say nationalistic in a positive way, that people understand their nation states, their countries mean something, and they have to mean something, and that citizenship means something. So I think in one level, it could be very positive. I believe strongly we're going to go through, just because of the financial crisis, that we're going to go through a decade or so of a real grind like the 1930s. I think the millennial generation, which I happen to believe, and I've said this many, many times, is the next greatest generation. will lead us out of here, but they will lead us out of here, and it will take a decade to do that.
So when you say
I think we'll have a uniting of the populist movement.